This is INCRadio DCEM 954, the voice of truth, the official radio station of the Church of Christ or Iglesianicristo.
Good morning and welcome to INCRadio South Central States Satellite Studio. We are here in Fort Worth today, and today we're going to have a great topic. Are you looking for a job? Do you need to figure out what you need to do so that you can land that job? Today's topic is we're going to give you 10 top advices to hopefully get you a job and secure yourself a job. But I'm not going to be here by myself today. Today I am joined by two guests. And we'll go ahead and start with the one here in studio with me.
Hi, everyone. I'm Melanie from Fort Worth, and I'm here today to share some insights that I have throughout the different jobs that I've had throughout the years.
Well, thank you for joining us. And remotely, all the way from another part of Texas, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Good morning to all. This is Mylene Novello, and I am from McKinney, Texas. I would like to share some experiences being a hiring manager within the airline, not airline, but different. Actually, I've been manager in not just the industry of not only with telecommunications, but also with other retail and other businesses.
Well, that's great. I think your expertise is really going to help when we give these tips to our folks because, right now, especially since a lot of people probably just graduated from college or just finished school, are looking for a job, and maybe we can somehow help them try to land these jobs. Okay, so we'll go right into it, and we're going to start with our first tip. Our first tip is tailor your resume for each job. Melanie, what's your thought on that?
I think that's so important, okay, because as I mentioned, I've had different jobs in the past. So currently I'm a realtor. Before that, I worked in retail and I worked as an educator. And so the skill set that you have and the experience that you have for those jobs, there's going to be some overlap as far as what you would need to be successful, but there's also some distinct traits and skill sets that you're going to want to highlight in order to get that job.
So, Mylene, I have a question for you. So, is it true like generic resumes get generic results? Is it really important to tailor your resume?
Yes, that is correct. Whenever I go through resumes and when I see that, for example, I'm hiring for an aviation company and they are saying that, they're applying for something else, that I remove that right away off the list, because this means that this person didn't take the time to really understand what the job that they're applying for.
And I do agree with you because prior to the job I have now, I was also in commercial real estate, and we were in charge of hiring like our admin folks. And every time we got resumes that were generic, it's just like you just toss it to the side. But if you tailor your resume, like when you look to apply for a job and you look at the keywords they're looking for and put those keywords in your resume, I think that makes it look more enticing as opposed to, job functions, right? And then the other thing I think with your resume is not only tailor it, but also talk about accomplishments. Not, oh, I did this and this and this and this on my job, because we don't care what you did. But when you see what they accomplished, then it kind of shows you what type of a person you are, like maybe you're hardworking and things like that. So you might be a better fit for the company. So I honestly think tailoring your resume is really important. And for those of you in the chat, go ahead and give us your opinions. Let us know when we have these tips. And then if you have questions about these tips on how to do certain things, let us know, and we'll be sure to address those during our show. So we do have a comment. Oh, there he goes. It says, "Don't be fake." I'm trying to see where it's at. I can't read. It says, "Don't be fake. It will demand you to put in your resume from you." And it's true though, because sometimes people actually do research, right? And they will try to do background checks to see if you really did it. I know there's a lot of people who like to pad their resumes and make it look so much better than what they really are. So you have to be careful with that, because if your company does the research, they're going to say, "Really, you graduated from Harvard? Like, where's your diploma?" Things like that, right? So, yes, please don't be fake. All right. Any other suggestion you want to give about tailoring your resume?
Not a suggestion, but something that I thought helped a lot. So I'm going to just talk a little bit about two times where I thought this helped me a lot. So whenever I was relocating and I've already had experience as a teacher, right? I'm trying to find a job in a different area altogether. I put one line there and I do it in a very easy to see, easily digestible. It's not going to be like paragraphs. Like, these are bullet points. So one of the bullet points that I decided to include was proven track record of success in state assessment. So they're going to immediately wonder, what is it that you did for you to be up here when the state was down here? And then as a realtor, one thing I include there as a bullet point is successfully closed 11 transactions in first 12 months. When usually a first year realtor maybe will get one closing, maybe two if they're really lucky. And so they're going to think, what is it that you did that you were able to close 11 into 12 months? Like, that's almost every single month.
Mhm.
And so that got me in that interview.
Exactly. And that's why accomplishments are really important, and not just what you did. Because you can say, "I showed houses, I did all the transactions," but that doesn't really show what you can accomplish, right? Mylene, any other last words about tailoring your resumes?
Yes, you have to really remember that it's your first step to get an interview, right? So having a good resume is really important. I don't believe in generic resumes, like all the points that have been mentioned already. Um, you have to have the buzzwords. I know that, well, I'm not going to open a can of worms, but AI is a big thing now, right? But it's really important for you to take a look at the posting and match some of those buzzwords, because the algorithms is what's going to allow you to, there's a count that HR does, right? Which, how many words, buzzwords really match with the posting, that will allow you to get to the next stage. So just wanted to mention that, because like I said, it's your first step for an opportunity to get interviewed, because the next, it's your first it's that first impression, right, before you get into the interview process.
Yes. And you mentioned first impression, so you got to make sure you do your spell checks and things like that. But you were talking about algorithm, and that is so true, because for the company I work for now, because we get so many resumes, people aren't even looking at it. They're feeding it into the computer, and when the computer sees the keywords that it needs, then that's the only time it'll pull it for the humans to actually look at. So really tailoring your resume, I think, is really important. Okay. So that's the first one. We do have a comment. It says, "Hi, Mom," from Eileen. "So exciting to hear you share your advice. Her advice in interviews and resumes got me my first nursing job." Wow, nice, Victoria. "Love you, Mom. Greetings from South Central States, Blue Ridge." Well, congratulations, Victoria. See? So that means Mylene knows what she's talking about, folks. Listen to what she has to say. All right, let's go to our second one. The second one is apply strategically, not blindly, right? So quality beats quantity. Don't just throw out applications to every single thing. What are your thoughts on that, Mylene? I can't. Oh,
Sorry, I
I think
couldn't
you're
get
on mute.
myself
Oh, there
off
you go.
mute. Yes, quality beats quantity. Again, it's really not the number of bullets of things that you list on your resume, but again, I go back to the buzzwords. I go back to what sister or what Melanie mentioned earlier regarding the accomplishments, because that's the quality, right? Those are the action words, verbs that really will say, oh, that's what's going to set you apart from someone's application that says, when you list kind of your daily tasks, right? What you do in a certain uh, in that certain group, but quantifying your results, quantifying your accomplishments is going to go a long way.
And let me ask you this. If, because like sometimes people will just apply for whatever job, even if they're not qualified, just because they just need to put their resume out there or their application. If they don't even qualify for the job, do you even look at that? Mylene?
So, oh, yes. So, I mean, there are different, because I used to, kind of main categories, right? One, it's the experience. Two, it's the education, and third, for me, is the kind of extracurricular activities to make you a well-rounded person, right? Because I don't only look at because you have that experience, but what is your network look like? What do you do as a person outside of work? Because that's also important for me as a hiring manager. Maybe not everyone, but that's just something that I do because I always look at the diversification of my team to see if there are other things that they do that I personally can tap into. So that way, oh, she has or he has this experience. Therefore, that would be a really good add. That's a skill that I'm missing in my organization. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. There is a comment I do want to share on here. I don't know why our tech guy decided to type it instead of just saying it out loud, but our tech guy puts in here, I look at the job listing for my own job and add those points to my resume. And I think that's also very important, right? But next time you can just yell it out. Okay, let's go to the third one. Network, network, network. Is networking important? Melanie?
Absolutely. One of the clients that I had, I actually met at a birthday party. So we went from, this is so and so's mom. And so we get to talking, and, a few months later, we ran into each other again. And a month after that, we were closing on a house together. And so if I didn't go to that birthday party, I stayed at home, I became my usual introverted self, then I would have missed out on that opportunity to help her. So
Yes.
go out there and mingle.
Yes. Mylene, how important is networking?
So I'll just share a couple of experiences for internal companies. Like I said, I work for an aviation company at the moment. And personally, whenever I even apply for a job, I always take a look at org charts. I take a look at who's who in that organization. And if I know someone who works in that team, I ping them that, hey, I applied for this job. Are there any insights that you can provide to me? Or, hey, do you know of anyone of the leadership team members from the hiring managers? Here are the names. Again, that's internally because you have specific names, right? Now, externally, you also, whenever I apply for another job, I actually look at my LinkedIn, kind of who's all in that company that I'm applying for. If I know them, I shoot them a note and just letting them know, hey, do you know of anybody? And then lastly, whenever I'm hiring, I tap into the network that I have. Hey, it looks like this person used to work in that organization within your team. Any feedback about this person? So it's a big company, yet it's a small network, really. So it really is is a place wherein you can tap into, because sometimes even though I don't read the resume, but it's that relationship or that experience you had with another group, and they give me that feedback, that will mean so much more to me than what's on the resume.
Yeah, I totally agree. There's a comment that was put on here by Romy, and he put in, it's not about what you know, but who you know. And I totally agree with that because, prior to my current job, when I was still working at the airport, I was making sure I was mingling with everybody at headquarters. When they needed help with special projects, I would always volunteer. And then so when this opportunity came to be a corporate instructor came up, I did apply, but I didn't really tailor my resume like I should have because I didn't have time. It was going to close. And so the computer spit it out. But because I had met people through the different projects I worked for, I just sent them a message. I was like, hey, I applied for the job, but I didn't get called in for an interview. She goes, what? They didn't, I was like, okay, let's go ahead and schedule it. She was already done with interviews. And so she had scheduled me as the last one that same day. She goes, you think you can come in today? And of course, I got the job. But it's the whole networking thing because they can see what you're capable of, and then they can see if they want to work with you. So besides getting to know people, like you said, go to different events. Don't just stay home, whether they're trade shows or just socializing with people you think might not be able to help you. You guys can meet people along the way as you're networking. Okay. Oh, there is another comment by Crizel, and she put in there, reference means more than your resume because anyone can really put anything on the resume. People can even copy the job description to get a better shot at the job. And that is so true.
That is so true.
I had one of my bosses write a letter of recommendation. And when I read it, I'm like, really? Is that me? But it just blew my mind away. And whoever read it loved it.
Well, the thing is, it seems like the job market is saturated. I mean, chances are, somebody in your circle, they're going to know 2 or 3 different realtors or 3 or 4 different people who can do a roofing job. But when you're networking, it's not just you're out there meeting people, it's a chance for them to get to know you and like you enough and trust you enough and hopefully earn, their business. Not that that's your goal. It's that you're setting yourself apart through your professionalism, or in your case, you were hardworking and you were just helping out a lot. That would be the difference between all those other candidates that could help set you apart.
Yeah, and I can imagine, especially with yours, how references really means a lot. Because
Yes.
I guarantee if someone says, hey, she's a great real estate agent, they will probably
Well,
go to you.
that's how I get a lot of my clients too, is the referral. So like
Exactly.
they would write a Google review for me, or they'll just tell somebody, just from word of mouth. It's so huge.
Very good. Okay, so before we go to our next tip, we will go to our thinking cap questions because we still need people to get points. Okay, so of course everything's going to be job related somehow. So our first question is, in which industry do employees tend to stay in their jobs the longest? Okay, is it A, government, B, media, C, nonprofit, or D, education? So which industry do people tend to stay the longest? A, government, B, media, C, nonprofit, or D, education. Make sure you only type in the letters. You don't have to type out the whole answers. And then that way you can go ahead and get your points. All right, with that being said, let's go to our fourth tip. And I think this is like one of the most important tips. Clean up your online presence. Mylene, what's your thoughts on that?
So I'm just going to say that maybe this is not something that I do often. However, I know for a fact that at least I go sometimes to Facebook and look for people, because LinkedIn, they're going to usually put down almost the same thing as what they have in resume, right? Because of it's, but Facebook really kind of shows me again, kind of what this person is outside of work. Which then means that's also as important, right? I don't do it often. I mean, it's just, it's not, if I have 100 resumes, obviously I don't go through each one. So when I get them down to my top 5 for interviews, that's what that's when I go online and just take a look at what's this person about outside of work.
I do the same thing when I was hiring in commercial real estate. The top contenders, we literally went onto all of the social media platforms just to see. And if there was something that was not very professional or not morally correct, we didn't even bother calling him in for an interview. So I honestly think that social media plays a big deal. What about you, Melanie?
If you ask me as like a realtor, right? That's very important. That's so important. But if you ask me as a teacher, that's even more important because um, there are certain professions that are held to like a certain high standard. Like you can't have certain things in your picture. You can't be wearing certain things in your profile picture because if a parent were to find your profile, it could mean a trip to HR.
Hmm.
So that's something that if you have a life outside of school, that's great,
Hmm.
but keep it private.
Okay. There's a comment here that Matt put on here. It says, don't use your randomly named email from 6th grade. I'm wondering what his email address was in 6th grade. If you want to share that with us, that would be good. And then Victoria did put something on here, which I thought was pretty interesting, where she said online presence is so important. As nurses, confidentiality and professionalism is crucial, especially nowadays. So many healthcare professionals have lost their jobs because of posting certain things. And that's true, because even in our industry, I know a lot of people who got fired because of their postings on social media, where they do like passenger shaming and things like that. Because we're in the airline industry, you cannot shame the passengers; those are your customers, right? And so I know people personally who got fired because of their online presence, right?
Does that kind of go along with cancel culture, do you think?
Which one?
Cancel culture and online presence, like what you say online, and as far as like you getting your job taken away from you because of that.
Yes. Yeah, I think so. And that's why it's really important, like my nephew, every time he tries to apply for a job, I told him he has to clean up his social media. And he thinks, well, they don't even know what my name is. How are they going to find me? I'm like, they're going to find you somehow, even if your name is not on that social media account. I go, they're going to, they have ways to find you. And so I really think the whole social media thing is a big deal. All right, let's go to our next one. Prepare for interviews like a pro, right? Research the company, research common questions, and have thoughtful questions ready to ask them. Confidence comes with preparations. I've got a lot to say on this, but let's start with Mylene. Mylene, do you have to be prepared for an interview?
Absolutely. So normally I advise kind of my mentees, right, that if they want to go, if they're up for an interview, go work with their other mentors, go work with someone and do like a practice interview, because that will allow you to feel kind of the pressure, the questions, your body language, right? So practice, practice, practice. Sometimes I also advise, because this is something that I got from one of my mentors, is practice in front of the mirror, right? And then in preparation, yes, exactly from what you did mention, take a look at the background of the company, the group that you're applying for. If it's internally, take a look at the org charts, take a look at the statement of work, right? So do all of that research. And then lastly, like what you mentioned about thoughtful questions, that is so important for me as a hiring manager. One of my pet peeves, when a candidate asks me, when do you make your decision, how long should I expect to wait before you make that decision? Allow the interviewer, because normally that's part of the script. I normally have that as part of the things that I do mention to close the interview. So focus more on the thoughtful questions. What do you expect from when you hire this person? What are your expectations 90 60 90 1 90 days 1 year? Or what's the culture like in your organization? If you hire me, what is that role in helping XYZ within your organization based on what you have heard about me so far? So, you got to be a little bit more thoughtful, and because that's another way for you to, if there are things that they didn't get to ask in your question, in the questions, when they say, yeah, if I hire you, I think that blah, 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 you can help my organization. That's also another tip for you to say, I'm glad that you mentioned that. Here's another example of why I think I am the right candidate, because of this other experience that I didn't get to tell you from the previous questions, right? So you got to leverage those opportunities that, hey, here's another 2 sentences that I can say about me, because obviously you cannot say everything in an hour, 45 minutes to an hour.
I have a question. If they ask something like, is there room for growth within the company? Is that a question that you entertain, or what are your thoughts when people ask that question?
Absolutely. I mean, you need to put yourself in that interview, right, we're in, because I want to do the same. I want to know about it too. Growth is always a big thing in whenever you apply, whether growth as an advancement, whether it's salary wise, position, level of position, right? It's definitely something that I entertain, and that's very normal.
Okay, so we do have a question from the audience, and it says, he says he has an interview next week and will be meeting about 10 of the top leaders in the company. Any advice on how to plan for that interview? Lylene, any advice?
That is a very huge question. I think all of the things that you have heard so far, Rome, is you got to remember all of those. Again, take a look at research about the company. Take a look at what are those things that they are looking for in a candidate. Um, if it's a finance company, take a look at what are those skills that you would bring. Compare, what would make you stand out, right? If everyone's going to say, yep, I mean, like what Melanie did mention, I close X number of deals, right? Maybe you only close 8. However, because of that 8 deals, I was able to take it to, the next step for, being, you know, went to, I was asked, because of that relationship, I was asked to go speak at this convention or whatever, right? So you gotta prepare, be ready to have those things on how you can stand out as a candidate. And then also, like I said, take a look at in that company, are there anyone in your network that works in that company that could help advocate for you?
Mhm. There was a comment that Crizel put on here where she says confidence is key in interviews. This is also your shot to really sell yourself. And I think that's one of the things. You have to walk into that interview being confident, because if you seem very timid or shy, then that might kind of discourage them. But there's also a difference between being confident and being cocky, right? You got to show confidence in a professional way. And of course, your attire is really important, depending on the company. If you're doing like a whole business setting, I don't know what, but everyone always says a blue suit always lands you a job. And every time I wore a blue suit, I always got the job. So I think that's true. I don't know how true that is.
I
But
think that what she said is so true because, confidence is important. But where do
mhm,
you get confidence? Is through your proficiency.
mhm,
So if you're not proficient, how can you feel confident? So where does proficiency come from? Is from practice.
yeah.
So practice, like what you mentioned. So for me, when I go into an interview, I have already talked to myself in the car the whole way there.
Mhm.
I've already looked at the mirror and practiced it. And like you said, role play. If there's somebody that can help me, hey, can you sit down and pretend that you're my prospective buyer real quick? Or can you sit down and pretend that you're this manager that I'm about to meet with? So it's really good to have that practice.
Okay, Renz did give a suggestion. He says, don't drink coffee. Why? What if you need to wake up? What if you're not a morning person and you need to be awake? So, Renz, you're going to have to tell us why you can't drink coffee. All right, let's go to our next tip. Oh, wait, before we do our next tip, let's go to our thinking cap so that we have enough time. All right, our second thinking cap question. Which non-traditional job pays the most? Is it E, social media influencer, F, professional gamer or esports athlete, G, voice actor, or H, freelance web developer? Okay, non-traditional job that pays the most. Social media influencer, F, professional gamer, G, voice actor, or H, freelance web designer. So that was a good question. We'll see what that one is. All right, let's go to our next tip. I think we're on number 6. Don't be discouraged by rejection. This is the hardest for me. Every time I don't get a job, I get so depressed. So I don't even apply for as many jobs as I want to because I don't want to get rejected. But what are your thoughts, Mylene, on rejection?
It is hard. Rejection is hard for anybody, right? However, you got to take a look at all the positive, turn it into something positive. Yes, you may have been rejected. However, you can always turn it around. Hey, when do you, Mr. Miss Manager, when do you, you can ask, are there any future openings within your group, if that's really something you're, or is there anyone that you can refer me to that could help me, that could help me get into that organization? Or can you tell me what skills do you think am I missing, right? To be able to get me into your organization next time. So there are different ways to do it, but most especially for me, if I don't get it, if I don't get the job, that means it's not for me. God has better plans for me.
Yes. And you know what? Crizel just put something in the chat about that too. She says every rejection is a redirection to something better. And I think that's true because, at the moment, yes, it's not great and you are going to be sad. But then when something better comes along, then you'll just start to realize why that happened. And so I think that's
so true. And
it
this is
is.
where trust and faith really plays a huge part because I'm just gonna share like a quick background. My husband a while ago actually got laid off from a job. It was like massive layoffs in the oil and gas industry, and he was looking for a job for months, and he couldn't find one, right? And so that actually led him to a much better position in a different city, which we've actually been wanting to leave that current city that we were in. And so I thought of that as like, that was just God's way of steering us in a different place for much better things. So I'm like, don't even worry about it. Just move on and and why am I okay, I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah,
Trust and faith.
That is so true. Okay, so hold on. Matt put in here a comment and I just had to read it. Just as she was redirected to me. So I guess that wasn't Chriselle's main goal, right? But then she got redirected to Matt. Oh, poor Chriselle. I'm so sorry. But yes, no, and that's true. One thing I do remember whenever we got rejected from certain jobs is I did reach back out to the person who did the interviews just so that you don't look like a sore loser, and just I would ask one, like, was there something that I could have done better, whether it was an interview, or was it something like, was there a skill set that I still lack that I should touch up on, and things like that, because nobody's perfect, and so we have to get better, and the only way to do that is find out what it is you did incorrectly or you didn't do correctly, and then that way hopefully on the next interview you can correct that and be better.
And unfortunately, sometimes those job postings are just a formality.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not about you at all. It's not what you
Mm-hmm.
didn't do. It's not something that you lack. It's because there was already somebody that was meant for that position. This is just
Yes.
us checking off a box. That's why we posted it. So
That
it's not
that
even
is so
about
true.
you.
That happened to me. I already knew I was getting the job, but they had to post it anyway just to make it legal. And then I had like a 5-minute interview, and they're like, "Okay, you're hired." I felt bad for everybody else, but yeah, that's so true. All right, let's go to our next one. Number 7.
Arnie, this is
Yeah.
Mylene.
Uh-huh.
Can I just address? I really like one of the comments there from Melissa Malabanan
Uh-huh.
when she said that don't expect, it's not just behavioral questions. In nursing, she mentioned here, we get asked clinical and critical thinking questions. That happened to me specifically as well. I applied for supply chain engineering, management job, but I haven't really it's really I have very limited supply chain background, and I was asked a technical question. But the way that you and sometimes you just don't have that technical background, right? But find a way as well, because this was a feedback that was given to me. Find a way to say that I don't have that specific skill. However, I, this is what I have that I think could be applicable to the question that you had asked. And these are the things that I did. And it's because of the way I answered the question, wherein yes, I don't have that, but one, it shows your critical thinking, right? That there is a way to still answer that question. Even you probably have not done it specifically that they were looking for, but you're able to still put a spin to it, and they will say, oh, that person is actually uh she thinks she
Yes.
knows how to do the job, right? So
Yeah, especially most managers, they want somebody who's self-sufficient. They don't want to be the ones that like have to micromanage and tell them every single thing that they do. And so, if you can show that you do have critical thinking skills, that I think is also very important. All right, let's do number 7. I think we're on number 7, and it says follow up, but don't pester. Right? Always send a thank you email after an interview, which I think is right, and gently follow up. But if you haven't heard back in a week or two, what does it mean? Don't pester. Do people pester you, Mylene, when you haven't reached out to them yet?
yes, and it's usually a turn off for me, believe it or not. So again, especially if I have already responded that based on the interview, I did mention that it will take 2 weeks. But for me as a hiring manager, normally I do send it like if I'm behind schedule, because I go through layers of approvals, then I send them a note that please be informed that it is at halt at the moment, pause, give another week or. And when people still keep bugging me, I'm like, you're off. You're off my list, right? Because patience is also a virtue, right? And
Mhm.
sometimes it's out of the control of the manager. But one other thing that I would like to mention though is, and I think I did see something on the chat wherein send a thank you note. I always appreciate it when people do take the time to say thank you. And it's your third chance, aside from your resume, it's from your interview, it's your third chance to say that I still think that I am the best candidate for this because of the following reasons in very, very high level summary, right? So it's your third chance to go ahead and reiterate the skills that you have based on what I heard from the interview. I really, I am just so excited because of the skills that I have. I truly think that I could bring so much into the team, right? So that's your chance to be able to highlight your skills and why you're the best candidate.
About that thank you note, would you prefer that it's sent via email where it's likely going to get buried, or do you like a handwritten note? What would
I will
you
tell you that
personally prefer?
sorry, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I was just wondering what you prefer, an email or a person like a handwritten note.
So in my 19 and a half years in the aviation industry and as 12 years in management, I've only received 2 thank you notes, written thank you notes, and it was mailed to me. And guess what? They're the ones who I hired.
I did the same thing when I was doing commercial real estate, and we interviewed a bunch of people. A bunch of people sent their thank yous via email. The one person who actually sent a card is who we hired. because we were still kind of debating. She was on the top of the list, but I think that one really stood out because they're actually taking time. Nobody handwrites anything anymore. So yeah, there is a comment up there from V. It says, you mentioned to be confident, but is there ever a case where someone is just arrogant versus actual confident? I say yes, but Mylene, do you want to elaborate on this one?
Absolutely. Yes. I've had folks who come in who are very arrogant, and the name dropping of
Mhm.
folks that they work with and blah blah blah, right? For again, that's just my style as a hiring manager. That whenever I see someone arrogant, it's not something it it's the it's the attitude, it's the indirect skills of a person that normally I look for. And if someone is overboard, then that's a red flag for me. So
Yeah.
as much as they are really good, right? And that's kind of the phone call that I make to like the previous manager. Hey, this is how this person came across to me. It looks like this person used to report to you. Can you validate that my observation is correct? And how does this person really get along with the rest of the team in your organization? And boom.
Yeah, when I was doing interviews and people kept saying, I did this, I did this, I did this, I saw that more of arrogance than confidence. But when they would talk about their team and says, this is what I did to help our team, and they use the our, we, and things like that, then I show that they were confident, but they weren't arrogant because now they weren't putting down their team. They were part of that team and they weren't taking the credit for every single thing that everybody did. So anytime you hear the word I, that's a red flag for me. Is that the same for you?
No. Because for me, it's your way to sell yourself, nobody else, not the team, right? what how I normally take a look at it is, to help differentiate between I and we, right? You can say, in the one of the examples that I can use is the project XYZ. It was a team effort. However, my role was, okay, you mentioned to them I was the team lead, I was the project manager. And as a project manager, this is what I did. To answer your question, I did the following tasks. I did the following and gave me the following results. So it also gives me the fact that, okay, you don't, your capability as a single person, as an individual contributor, to be able to do the job. And I assess that, how does that skill that you have work with the rest of the team? So the interview is about me, it's about you, nobody else, not the whole team, but it's you as an individual. So I appreciate that I did this, but you got to also tell me that what was your role, right, in that team, because that will at least tell me the kind of team that you have, and how do you work well within a team.
Okay. All right. So before we go on, let's go to our last thinking cap because we are starting to run out of time. And the last question. According to a poll taken in 2024, which profession ranked the highest among elementary school age children? So they were asked like what they wanted to be when they grew up. Okay. Is it J, a teacher, K, a doctor, L, a scientist, or M, an actor? In 2024, what did the kids want to be? A teacher, a doctor, a scientist, or an actor? That was really surprised when I saw that one. But, all right, so we'll go to our next one. Stay organized. Is organized really important, right? Keep track of where you've applied, the interview dates and contacts. Use a spreadsheet or job tracker to stay on top of everything. Melanie?
When you're applying for multiple jobs, there's a chance that you're going to lose track of every single person you contacted. So, yes, I agree with this. It's good to have a list of who have you interviewed with, when was that, and that way you know when to send that follow-up email, not to pester, but to follow up. because I've heard some folks send out 50 applications in one day, you know. So there's got to be a way for you to keep track of everything.
Mm-hmm. Mylene, is being organized important?
Yes, ditto. I echo what Melanie just mentioned.
Yes, because I remember when I was much younger and I was just applying for jobs, I forgot what jobs I applied for. And when people would call me, I'm like, ooh, which job was that? I forgot. So, yes, I think you should be organized. All right, let's go to our next one. Keep your skills sharp, right? Take a course, volunteer, freelance, anything that keeps you learning and show initiative. Is that important, Mylene?
It really depends what you currently do and your interest. For example, is your aspiration to become a C-suite, in leadership, right, in a company, or do you just want to be an individual contributor? Like, some folks are really just satisfied with where they're at. I think when I was younger, yes, absolutely, I was a go-getter. I'm like, I need to get this certification. I need to go, I need to go get my MBA, and then after my MBA, okay, what's next, right? It's that never-ending search for, okay, I need to be better. But after a while, right, and life happens, right? There's family, there's all these things in life that just, and other activities that you have, outside of your job, it just takes over as well. So, but the keeping sharp really could be in so many different other ways. One, I mean, I listen to like some skills that I want, I listen to podcasts on my way to work, right? I don't necessarily have to be in a class setting, right? Or I read books, right? So there's different ways for you to sharpen your skills.
Hmm. I agree. I mean, it's so important to be a lifelong learner, but there is a difference between learning and doing. So let me just give you an example. Like in our brokerage, there's an agent there who has this accreditation. Like I'm accredited for this and I'm accredited for that, but they haven't made a single sale in the entire year. You can learn all the contracts that you want, but if you're not out in the field and doing it, then what use is that knowledge, you know? So it really depends. It really depends on what you're trying to accomplish. If you're new and you don't have business yet, maybe invest in that. But there should be a balance. You want to continue refining your skills and learning different things, adding to your skill set. But at some point, you got to go out there and do it because there's some things you cannot learn from a book or a course or an instructor.
Hmm. That's true. And then I know it's also important to, like, let's say you're in between jobs. And this is why I used to volunteer when I was in between jobs, because it actually helped fills the resume gaps, right? Because sometimes if the gap is too long, companies are going to wonder what's going on. So I used to do a lot of volunteer work to fill the gaps, to show that, hey, even though I wasn't working, I was still doing something. So, like you said, I think doing is really important. All right, and then our last tip is know your value and be ready to negotiate, right? Research salary ranges for your industry and location and be ready to discuss your worth confidently when the time comes. And the whole salary range, I think that's important because sometimes kids nowadays think they should be earning this much money when that is not even the range for that job. Um, Helene, what are your thoughts on that?
No, absolutely. Both points that you had mentioned, and it's funny how you say, with the younger generation now, sometimes they just expect so much, or sometimes they feel like, oh, I should be the CEO already in 5 years. But no offense to the younger generation. I mean, it really just takes time. Do not expect that, right? But to know your worth, I will just say, and this is something that I tell my employees, especially when, during merit discussion and whatnot, right? Or in, I did this, I did that, right? That you need, that's where documentation comes very handy. and the level setting in the beginning of the year. So as you guys know, for those who are in, in a typical setting, corporate setting, every year they come up with priorities, right? And in those priorities, you need to really sit down and tell your manager, hey, this is what I think I can do to help in that priority. But you need to have SMART goals, right? SMART, they need to be specific, they need to be measurable, actionable. I forget the R, and T, the schedule, right? The time. So it's a discussion with your manager when you say that, differentiating, this is what you expect from your team, but I can go above and beyond that and deliver the following things to you. That's what exceeds far exceeds come in. Wherein something that, something that was not asked of you, but you did more than what you were asked to do, right? Going above and beyond. That's your negotiation element during salary time, right? Wherein, hey, I know that I am more capable than the rest of the people or the rest of the teammates, because these are the things that I did, and I actually delivered more than what you had asked for. And it's right here in writing in my priorities. So that's my thought there.
So if you know your value, and let's say you know the range that the industry has, and they lowball you, would you suggest that they settle for that, or do you think they should stick their guns to really know their value? What are your thoughts on that?
It really depends also in a company. Again, talking only about corporate setting, right? At least in the company that I work for, we do have salary ranges. We're in minimum, middle, and exceed, or kind of exceeding a little
The
bit
high
more.
end.
Yeah. And it's also, it does explain there too that they do their own research when it comes to, kind of what benchmarking with other companies or within that industry. Keep in mind too that, and again, putting on a management hat here, keep in mind too that salary isn't the whole thing that you need to look into. You got to look at the benefits. So for example, not too many companies offer or match your 401k 10%. Normally it's only 3-4%. In my company, they match up to 10%. Not too many companies do that anymore. Do you have a pension plan, right? Other companies don't offer it's almost unheard anymore when it comes to pension plan, but I do have a pension plan. So you got to look at the overall. I mean, it's not all about that magic number in your salary, because if your medical here is actually this, but if you go to another company, you pay a lot more. So think about, yes, your friend who works in the same industry, but it's just in a different company, probably makes $5,000 than you do. But think about all of the other benefits that you receive that they do not.
Yeah, totally agree. Because like with me, I don't get paid much, but I love my benefits, and that's what's keeping me at my job. It's the benefits that I get. So I do. Well, those are our top 10 tips. Hopefully, our listeners did get something out of it, and hopefully, if you guys want to still share your comments in the chat, we can go ahead and read those out. But before we end, we do want to show. Do we want to show the leaderboard, or do we want to do the answers first? All right, let's go do the answers for our thinking cap. So the first question is, which industry do employees tend to stay the longest in their jobs? Melanie, what do you think it is?
I'm thinking media.
You're thinking media. Mylene, what do you think that is?
With everything that I see on TikTok and everything, yes, I have to go to on media too.
It's actually government.
What?
People stay in government jobs longer because I know they're more stable. I mean, I know my whole family works for the government, and they were not happy that I would not get a government job, and they retire working the government job, which I can't do because I can't sit down all day long.
I'm a little surprised with that though, because again, with government, once the program, right, is done, then that's kind of, layoffs do happen, or a company doesn't win that program. So that was kind of my thought process.
Yes. Well, for mine, because my family, like I said, they work for the government. They're like for Department of Transportation, so it's something that's always going to be there. And then the other ones worked for like they work for DMV, they work for Franchise Tax Board. So the state tax is always going to be there. So I think it all depends on which government they did. Okay, the second question: which non-traditional job pays the most?
I think web developer. No.
You think web developer, Miley? What do you think?
Yeah, I think so too. I agree with that.
Nate, what do you think?
I would think influencer. Sky's the limit.
Influencer. Karomi, what do you think? F, which one? A gamer, a professional gamer. You guys
Social
are funny.
media influencer, you get a freebie, but that's not a salary.
You guys all guessed, and you guys all guessed the wrong one. It is a
What?
voice actor. The voice actor gets
Ah.
paid a lot of money. Yes. I'm
Wow.
surprised to see that one too. I know. Okay, and then the last question. According to a poll taken in 2024, which profession ranked the highest among elementary school aged children? Melanie, we'll start with you because your job is on here.
Probably doctor.
You think doctor? Mylene, what do you think?
I don't know if Melanie and I just think alike. Yeah.
You think
Doctor
doctor?
as
How about
well.
Nate?
I would think actor nowadays.
Actor nowadays? Romy?
Yeah, I agree.
Actor. Okay, well, the girls are right on this one. It is doctor. More of children chose to be a doctor, but that's when they were elementary school. Of course, things change as they get older. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at our leaderboard. So you still have a chance. What's today? Today, we still got 2 more weeks, right? So we have 2 more weeks of thinking caps as long as you log on every week and guess. Hopefully the questions aren't too hard. But just give your guesses. And so we do have Renz, Oliver, V, and Johnson family, and Mila with a point. And then who's got 2 points? Anyone? Oh, was that the first one? They only got 1 point from last week? Were the questions hard last week? I don't even remember what they were. Oh, it's about schools. Okay. So then that means everyone still has a chance to catch up. So hopefully you guys got your answers correct on this one. And then hopefully you'll get your points. There was a comment in here that Fredalyn put in there, which I think, and I think for us, it rings true, right? Where it says, in finding a job, set a time first for a devotional prayer. It is key to a job, to get a job successfully. And I totally agree with that because, that does play a big role, at least for, what I believe in and stuff. There was something else that Rome put in here about sharpening our skills. He said, golfing can still sharpen your skills, right? Skills like discipline, patience, and consistency. Like you said, sharpening your skills comes in different forms. And if you think golfing is the way to do it, then go ahead. And Rome, since you put that, Romy Lou said he's going to come join you out there. I would join you guys too, but I do not know how to golf. So, but yes. So anyways, thank you, Mylene, for joining us. Do you have any shout outs you'd like to give to anyone before we end?
Sure, I'll take advantage of that. I wanted to say thanks to the family and friends. I know it was a last minute sharing of the link, but thank you so much for supporting me. Well, also, of course, South Central States. So really appreciate all of the love. So love back to you, to all of you.
Yes, thank you all for those who tuned in because she sent you the invites. Melanie, any shout outs?
Yes. And I would like to shout out Elaine Johnson. She is going to be in this month's CEA activity. So this is going to be on a Monday at 6, July 28th. So this is something that I love about Elaine, is she supports the activities that we have in CEA. For those of you who are not aware, CEA is the Christian Employee Association of our district. So hopefully we'll see you there too.
What is the activity?
It's a webinar about effective communication.
Nice. So like communicating between people, between
different
professions?
scenarios and audiences, communication styles, and also just adapting your communication for those different audiences and scenarios.
So that would be good, especially for those who are introverted, right?
Yes.
All right. So anyways, everyone, thank you so much for joining us on INC Radio South Central States. We will be back next week, same time, same place. If you have any suggestions you'd like to give us, let us know. But before we end, we always want to say thank you to our INC radio station manager, Brother Wally Taray, our Deputy Executive Minister, Brother Angelo Eraño Manalo, and of course, our Executive Minister, Brother Eduardo V. Manalo. Thank you all for joining. See you next time. Oh, this counts.